The story begins with a young man telling his tale. After dying in his past life because of a mistake made by a he starts a journey of reincarnation into a new life. He jokes about being interested in this divine reincarnation, calling her a beautiful woman. He feels sad knowing he will lose all memories of her in his new life, and he'll forget her beautiful face. His voice is filled with excitement as he thinks about the skills he wants to use in his new life. He introduces himself as Kelvin and encourages himself to have fun in this new world. Suddenly, he lands in a forest with a loud crash. A rabbit, two slimes, and a bear rush out of their homes after hearing the noise, curious to see the young man lying at the base of a tall tree. Kelvin wakes up from his fall, feeling a slight headache and wondering where he is. Out of nowhere, a brown menu pops up in front of him. Confused and not remembering his past life, he asks questions that don't make much sense, wondering if he's dead or in a different world. The menu shows a Start Adventure button, and he cautiously presses it. A female voice shouts excitedly from the menu, calling him my lord, and congratulating him for being randomly chosen to be reincarnated, all while she floats around him. The menu tells him he no longer has memories from his previous life, but agreed to the reincarnation. Shocked and confused, he blames his pre-incarnation self for this ridiculous situation. The menu assures him he's in a fantasy world full of epic battles and magic. She shows him the status menu with the skills he specifically selected before reincarnation. Kelvin is amazed by his stats. He's at level 1, but his skills are at a much higher level. He's a summoner, the top class rank for adventurers. His agility is 3, his magic ability is 5, and his luck is 4. His special skills include summoning, green magic, and appraising eyes. He feels impressed with his past self for choosing a supportive class and apologizes for being doubtful at first. The menu recommends he start his adventure by heading to the nearest town and joining a guild to make it easier to access contracts. On their way to the city, Kelvin asks the menu about her adventure plans, wondering if she will be joining him. She giggles and shows him her stats, revealing her name is Melfina and her age is 1,276 years. However, he cannot read all her stats until he reaches a higher appraising eye rank. She claims she's never had to do servant duties since she's the divine reincarnation, so he has to take responsibility for asking for her help in his past life. He critiques himself again. As they walk through the city, they have deep conversations about his reincarnation story. With Melfina's help, he recalls that he died in an accident due to a supreme mistake, which led to Melfina's intervention. He mentions that he fell in love with her at first sight and asked to make a contract after gaining his skills. Melfina excitedly responds that she agreed because she loves him and needed a break from her job after working for so long. They continue discussing his past life, and Kelvin feels embarrassed by his choices. Melfina announces they are close to the guild called the Adventurers Guild. Before long, they enter the building, where busy receptionists attend to adventurers. Kelvin approaches a receptionist to register as an adventurer. He fills out his class rank with a low-level class, Green Mage, based on Melfina's suggestion to keep his summoner identity hidden, as that's a rare rank. He expresses his desire to enjoy his freedom in this new world. The receptionist returns with a membership card and explains the terms of his F rank. She tells him he can take a job for a rank that's one step higher, but he'll face a penalty if he fails. He gets 3 job offers, and Melfina advises him to choose the challenge of defeating 3 blue slimes, recommending he use his summoner skills to make a contract with them. He takes the jobs and leaves the guild with a wooden rod. He walks through the forest and sees 3 slimes in the middle of a field. He approaches one to create his summoner contract. He charges in to hit the slime without any preparation but misses and gets hit repeatedly. Surprised by this, he studies the slime and moves faster. He successfully hits it and creates his contract. He names it Clotho and summons it to absorb other slimes. Clotho manages to absorb 2 slimes while he kills one to finish his task. He returns to the guild and receives payment for completing his first adventure. While looking for the inn recommended by Ange, the receptionist, he spots a slave trader between 2 buildings with bidders around. In a cage, 2 slave women sit sadly, a normal girl and a half-elf girl. Kelvin watches for a minute and then walks away. He finally finds the inn called the Spirit Song. He goes in and greets the owner. He books a room and orders some food. As he relaxes in his room, he wishes for a bath. But Melfina tells him that only kings and the wealthy can enjoy baths in this world. He promises himself he will have a house with a bath one day. Later, he steps out to eat and gets excited by the delightful aroma. Melfina urges him to work hard and summon her quickly so she can join him for delicious human meals. Kelvin sits at a table with various dishes. He gulps his food loudly and happily. He wonders what climate and foes await him in this new world while promising to use his summoner rank in in the best way possible. Kelvin shares his experiences in his new world. He talks about the jobs he's taken on with Clotho, his new servant, and how they've been leveling up and dropping skill points. He decides that reaching concealment rank B is his goal, aiming to achieve that rank for peace with the world and himself. This episode kicks off with Kelvin at the Adventurers Guild. After tackling several tough jobs, he gets promoted from Adventurer rank F to rank E. Agni, the receptionist, congratulates him, but voices her concerns about him taking on higher-ranked jobs without forming a party. Melfina comments on Kelvin's reasons for not teaming up, saying he's on a tight protection leash and doesn't want his identity exposed. Two young adventurers at the back of the guild watch Kelvin enviously and question his promotion. Other adventurers gossip about him, guessing he's a mage from another kingdom. Agni asks if Kelvin is a court mage because he shows extraordinary strength for a beginner. He replies that he doesn't have much to share about his past. She warns him to be careful with his next job. Kelvin appreciates her concern and asks for a rank D job. Suddenly, a voice comes from the back of the reception, suggesting Kelvin should take a Black Ghost Knight job. A young guy steps forward, and Agni quickly recognizes him, welcoming him back from his adventure. He introduces himself as Cashel and brags about just finishing a rank C job while at a rank D level. Other adventurers chime in, saying he's as good as a rank B adventurer but loves picking on newbies like Kelvin to intimidate them. Cashel invites Kelvin to join his search party to hunt the Black Ghost Knight. Agni jumps in, trying to talk Cashel out of it. Cashel brushes her off and continues with his offer. Kelvin speaks up to decline, but Cashel insists. He uses appraisal magic to check Kelvin's stats and sees that Cashel has high stats, troubling skills, and a murderer title, which feels off to him. Knowing Cashel won't back down, Kelvin proposes a compromise, a competition to see who can defeat the knight first. Cashel, surprised by his boldness, accepts but wants to continue with his party, while Kelvin decides to go solo. After Cashel leaves, Kelvin plans to intentionally walk into Cashel's trap. He says he wants to satisfy his curiosity about the fight and show off the skills he gained from leveling up. Cashel walks down a quiet street to meet his party. His teammate Gimel warns him that Kelvin might be a stronger contender than they think, since his appraisal magic is rank C concealed, and he can't read the newbie's stats. Surprised, Cashel admits he thought Kelvin was just a reckless beginner. The last party member, Raj, a muscular and angry guy, asks Cashel for permission to crush Kelvin. Cashel suggests they should act like good veterans. Raj argues that being gentle is too hard, and Cashel smirks, encouraging him to go ahead and enjoy the violence. The next scene shows the wicked spirit castle of the Black Ghost Knight. Cashel and his team storm in to find all the undead monsters defeated. Kelvin sneaks out of the shadows and welcomes Cashel and his party. Cashel notices the green staff Kelvin is carrying and realizes he's a green mage. Gimel calls him an idiot for hiding his true identity while still letting it slip through the staff. Kelvin reminds them about the Black Ghost Knight on the other side of the room. Cashel mocks him, saying Kelvin has been waiting for their help to take down the knight because he's too scared to go alone. Kelvin brushes off his comment and insists he doesn't want any distractions, suggesting they finish off the remaining monsters before dealing with the knight. Gimel guesses he's a bounty hunter after the reward on their heads, which explains his high concealment rank. Unaware of the bounty, Kelvin remarks that he's just lucky they came to him first. He challenges Raj and irritates him with a childish nickname. Raj, furious, charges at Kelvin to attack. Unfortunately, he gets caught in a mudvine trap that Kelvin set up. Cashel, now worried, comments that Kelvin is using the concealment skill perfectly, which feels off. Kelvin strikes at them, and Gimel tries to escape, but Kelvin summons Clotho, now a giant slime glutonia, to stop him. Clotho grabs Gimel and slams him against the wall. Raj manages to jump out of the mudvine, but Clotho wraps him up with its tentacles. Cashel rushes to attack Kelvin, but Kelvin hits him hard, and he goes down. Kelvin binds all three of them, intending to turn them over to the guild. He opens the door and sees the Black Knight ghost standing there. He checks the knight's stats and notices his unique features. Deciding against defeating him, Kelvin proposes making a contract and adding him to his party. The Black Knight questions him, and Kelvin introduces himself and explains his intention. The two of them sit on the staircase to the throne, and the knight expresses surprise at Kelvin's request, noting that people usually start a fight with him instead. The knight shares a long story about his past and how he became what he is now. Kelvin grows tired and confused by the lengthy tale and asks for his thoughts on the contract again. The knight says he can't accept without a solid reason to challenge him. Kelvin then challenges him to a fight, and the knight agrees. The knight and Kelvin engage in an intense battle. With Clotho's help, Kelvin eventually defeats the knight. The next day, Kelvin hands a fragment of the knight's armor to the guild, and everyone gathers around him in excitement. They thank him for getting rid of Cashel and his evil crew. In jail, jail, Cashel and his team face the possibility of a death sentence. The guild celebrates, and Agni tells Kelvin he will be promoted to a higher rank. As Kelvin walks home, Gerald teases him about Agni, and Melfina thinks of herself as his fiancée, but he quickly shuts them down. As he climbs the stairs, he spots a middle-aged man waiting for his return. The scene starts with a flashback of Kelvin with the Black Ghost Knight, Gerald. After being defeated, Kelvin submits to him and makes a contract. He shows sympathy for Gerald's loss of family and country. Kelvin watches the older gentleman on the stairs, waiting for his return. The man finally speaks and playfully teases Kelvin, calling the day a perfect adventure day for him. Kelvin plays along and expresses his eagerness to embark on another adventure right away. The man laughs, praises Kelvin's enthusiasm for work, but advises him that he needs some leisure time. He identifies himself as the guildmaster and introduces himself properly, explaining the secret behind his popularity through clever deceit. He questions whether Kelvin is from another world. Afraid of being exposed, Kelvin uses his appraisal eyes to check the guildmaster's stats. He finds that the guildmaster has a higher appraisal eye level than his own, and can easily access his stats. Both Kelvin and the guildmaster sit in the lounge. The guildmaster discusses the news he received from Ainge about Kelvin's battle with Cashel and the Black Ghost Knight. He asks about Kelvin's summoner class. Confused, Kelvin blames himself for being careless and exposing his identity, while considering his servant's advice to reveal himself. Kelvin criticizes the guildmaster for having high-level appraisal eyes yet letting criminals like Cashel go free. The guildmaster explains that Cashel comes from a foreign noble family in the militant nation of Trison, and he lacks sufficient proof to take action against him. He claims he has been preparing to expose Cashel's deeds and take action until Kelvin got involved. Kelvin urges him to get to the point, and the guildmaster states he wants to extend his friendship, not come as an enemy. He mentions having friends from another world in the past, just like Kelvin. They were known as the heroes of Daramis, and Melfina recalls their reincarnation. Kelvin asks Melfina for more details, and she promises to explain in a better situation. The guildmaster tells Kelvin that the Demon King is coming to destroy the people, according to a prophecy from the Supreme announced by the priestess of Daramis. He believes the strength and violence of other monsters align with the coming of the Demon King. He attributes his strength to Gerald during Kelvin's battle for the revival of the Demon King. He seeks Kelvin's help to defeat the Demon King and protect the city from his attack. He offers Kelvin an automatic level up to a high rank, good payment, and freedom as a summoner class adventurer after the job is done. The guildmaster also mentions that he holds a special rank and needs to promote him to prevent others from acquiring his skills. Kelvin accepts the offer, and they shake hands. The next morning, the inn owner joyfully celebrates Kelvin's promotion to a rank B adventurer and promises a celebratory dinner. Gerald teases him again about the inn owner, but Melfina, feeling jealous, calls herself his fiancée. Kelvin steps in to stop their teasing. Once settled in his room, he asks Melfina about the reincarnation she performed. She explains that the priestess of Daramis carried out the summoning, and her responsibility was to find the humans involved in the reincarnation. While thinking about the guildmaster's words, Kelvin realizes Melfina doesn't fully grasp the significance of reincarnation. He finishes his meal and tries to sleep, but he can't stop thinking about his intense battle with Gerald. He calls on Clotho and asks for the reward money in its inventory. Clotho shows him the money, and Kelvin praises its inventory skills. Kelvin tells Claire, the inn owner, to set aside another plate for the celebration dinner. He walks down the street with the reward money and shares with his servants that he plans to buy a slave girl. He explains that he needs the skill point of a slave girl who has no master. When he arrives at the slaver's place, he sees a man burning after touching the half-blood elf girl. He recognizes her from their last encounter. He checks her stats and finds that her skill points are intact, but he'll need a Sacred Bless spell from a rank A white magic user to break her curse. He leaves the slave trader and returns by the end of the day to buy her. He pays the slave trader, and they leave together. She stops him midway and thanks him for his kindness, introducing herself as Eiffel. She tells him her story of slavery, mentioning she has been a slave since birth. Kelvin asks her to join his party, but she refers to her fire dragon curse, saying she doesn't want to hurt anyone. He frees her from the curse after buying a rank A class with his last skill points. She cries in gratitude and kneels before her master. Melfina makes her usual comment, saying Kelvin can keep the elf girl as long as he has enough MP to summon her. He teases her back and praises her good heart. Kelvin and Ethel enter the inn. The inn owner sees them, and they exchange greetings. Kelvin asks Claire to dress Ethel properly for dinner. Claire agrees and takes her into a room. He waits impatiently for Claire and Ethel to return, tossing and turning in hunger. Finally, they come back, and Kelvin is stunned by Ethel's transformation. He's speechless for a moment before complimenting her beauty. She worships him again for his kindness and promises to do her best for him. They finally eat their meal, and Ethel bursts into tears of joy. The briefing begins, and Kelvin introduces her to all his servants. He tells her that he's a summoner. He transfers his skill set to her so she can follow along and urges her to keep his information a secret. At night, he struggles to sleep with her because there aren't any available rooms. He attributes his distraction to her extreme cuteness as he lies back down. The last scene shows a red-haired lady captive to a powerful captor. Kelvin shares his experience working with Ethel and how they've been leveling up and taking jobs together. He mentions that she spent all her skill points on archery and far-seeing, and she learned sewing when she leveled up. She recreates the maid outfit Claire gave her. Kelvin also talks about taking up blacksmithing and still practicing it. The mix of Ethel's high-level archery skills, red magic, and the fire dragon's ability makes her an amazing fighter, and he praises her for it. In the next scene, Kelvin is at the guild presenting evidence of his recently completed job. Agni celebrates his consistency, and Ethel gets excited about her master's upcoming promotion to rank A adventurer. Kelvin empathizes with Ethel, recalling how she hit her opponent on the head with an arrow during her last rank exam. Agni invites Ethel to go out with her on a date, and she agrees. Ethel then extends the invitation to Kelvin, hoping he won't turn her down. Agni playfully encourages him to accept the offer, and he agrees to go out the following day. Ethel's face lights up with joy at his acceptance. The next day, Kelvin is at the sweet shop waiting for Ethel and Agni. He starts imagining the date and gets a little anxious about how Melfina would react if she were around. Fortunately, she's at the Divine Oracle Temple. Agni interrupts his thoughts by calling his name loudly and rushing over to him. He compliments her outfit. Agni asks about Ethel, and he says she's taking her time. Soon, Ethel appears, looking stunning in a lovely gown. Kelvin is left speechless by her beauty when she asks for their opinion on her dress. Agni snaps him out of his daze, and they both compliment her. At the sweet shop, Ethel offers to feed Kelvin in public, but he turns her down. Three young men notice them and become envious of Kelvin, seeing the two most popular and beautiful girls eating with him. Agni feels jealous of Ethel's gesture towards Kelvin and offers her own. Kelvin turns down both of their offers and asks them to stop. Suddenly, a short prince with two guards bursts into their space, interrupting their conversation. The bodyguard tells Kelvin to kneel and introduces the prince as the ruler of Trison, a large military county to the east. The bodyguards threaten to teach Kelvin a lesson for disrespecting him. The prince demands the two girls in exchange for his forgiveness. The guards move toward them, but Kelvin reacts quickly, attacking and throwing them against the wall. The prince, now frightened, kneels before Kelvin and admits he came to meet Leo at the guild, wanting the powerful adventurer in the city to serve him so that his people would believe in him. Kelvin lets them go and leaves with the two girls. In the Divine Temple, a young girl named Colette prays to Melfina's statue, seeking her guidance. The statue glows and greets her. Colette asks about the hero's well-being and shows Melfina their growth, impressing her. Colette requests a new oracle to protect them from an evil she senses coming from the western continent. Melfina grants her wish and instructs her to send her heroes there while keeping them away from Parth. She concludes by calling Colette the Princess of Daramis. The four heroes storm in to meet the princess, and she tells them about the new oracle. In Kelvin's room, Ethel wakes him up and thanks him for saving her. He apologizes for still sleeping in the same room, explaining that Claire refused to rent out another one for reasons he doesn't know. Ethel, in tears, asks if he's not attracted to her. Kelvin admits she's attractive, but says she should only do things with someone she loves. She confesses that she loves him, and he reassures her that she's the most attractive girl he knows. Ethel hugs him excitedly. The next morning, Kelvin, Slime, and Gerald check the stats menu of the heroes with Melfina's help. Clotho moves part of its body to Ethel's shoulder to help her connect to the servants' network. Gerald points out that the heroes don't have strong levels or skills. Kelvin asks what they've been doing since they were summoned a year ago. Melfina expresses her disappointment but also praises Kelvin and the party for their growth. Kelvin boasts about his blacksmithing skills, while Gerald teases him about his many failed attempts. Ethel shows off the suit she made for Kelvin, and Melfina wishes Daramis's heroes were as strong as them. Claire interrupts and knocks on the door, announcing that the guild wants to speak with Kelvin. In the guild master tells him that a demon has been found in the hermit's cave by adventurers. Melfina agrees and says demons are one of the strongest races, alongside dragons. The guild master asks for Kelvin's help to defeat the demon due to its unknown strength. given his S-rank title. He changes the subject and informs Kelvin about the news regarding the Prince of Trison, using it as blackmail, explaining that he's having a hard time dealing with the situation to prevent it from turning into an international incident. He gets back on track and asks Kelvin if he'll take the job, and Kelvin accepts right away, thinking the guildmaster is the real demon. At the Hermit's Cave, Kelvin enters with his party and notices other adventurers there. The adventurer Ethel, accidentally hurt during the exam, approaches them. Kelvin asks what's going on, and tells him that a barrier has been placed on the cave. Kelvin instructs the other adventurers to stay outside while he and his party go into the cave. They walk through it for a long time until they find a door. Kelvin senses 2 lives inside and tells his servants to attack the stronger one first. They open the door and are met with a gruesome sight of skulls on the ground. A girl with red hair is chained to 2 large metallic poles. They see a figure in armor who introduces himself as the archdemon Victor. Kelvin assesses his rank as very high and smirks. They demand to know the girl's identity, and he reveals she's the daughter of the Demon King, Gustavo, whose existence has been kept a secret. The archdemon admits he set a trap for a powerful human to come into the cave so he could eat him and absorb his powers, which he needs to free the girl from the chains. He tries to attack Kelvin, but Gerald quickly defends him with a shield. The archdemon claims he was an aide to the former Demon King, and explicitly states his intention to eat the Demon King's daughter to become the next Demon King. Kelvin is pumped about finally facing an S-rank opponent. The archdemon, noticing his excitement, raises the dead monsters in the room, claiming that Kelvin and his party are outnumbered. He commands the monsters to attack. Kelvin uses his wind-shot attack to wipe them out, while Gerald and Ethel take down monsters using their unique skills. The archdemon watches Kelvin and his party in action, impressed by their teamwork. After they defeat the monsters, Kelvin steps up and challenges the archdemon directly. The archdemon throws a smoke bomb to distract them and tries to attack from underground, but Kelvin senses his movements and they defend themselves. He manages to hit Gerald, but Kelvin sends Clotho to hold him back for a minute while he casts another spell. The archdemon, being powerful, breaks free from the spell, but they hit him with another. Ethel fires a fire arrow from behind as Gerald strikes with his spell-imbued sword, severing the archdemon's left arm. He mentions that Kelvin is the second person to injure him this badly, claiming his age has dulled due to the peace of the times. When Kelvin asks if he wants to give up, the archdemon says he's just getting started. He retreats and transforms into a creepy demon form. He attempts to cast a spell, but they relentlessly bombard him with various attacks. He tries to retaliate, but Gerald defends against it but gets injured in the process. Ethel keeps shooting arrows, while Clotho unleashes a bunch of swords and metals from Kelvin's previous failed blacksmith attempts. The archdemon weakens from the onslaught and struggles to continue fighting. They send their final attacks, causing him to crash heavily into the building, shaking the entire structure. A large round brick begins to fall from the building, headed straight for the girl, and the archdemon rushes to save her. Kelvin watches in confusion. The archdemon falls weak, and they approach him. Kelvin questions his true intentions for fighting them, and the archdemon reveals the truth about the girl. He states he's been her protector for years since her birth, shielding her from those who might exploit her. The Demon King kept her hidden from enemies, and before he died, he sealed her away to protect her from evil, meaning only a powerful human could break the seal. The archdemon explains he has been watching over the princess, waiting for the day the hero shows up so that she could be crowned queen once he's defeated. In his weakened state, he pleads with Kelvin to lift the spell and invite her into his party. Kelvin offers to make him his servant to heal him, but the archdemon turns it down. Kelvin walks up to the girl and breaks the seal. She awakens from her deep sleep, horned and winged, and scolds her dad and the archdemon for their foolish choices while crying on the archdemon's arm. They exit the cage, and Kelvin carries the girl on his back. The other adventurers spot them, and rushes to catch up. Ethel shows proof of the archdemon's defeat and tells him to take it to the guild for appraisal. He asks about the girl. With her horns and wings disguised by her father's magic, Kelvin smoothly tells a convincing lie about her character. They leave everything to the adventurers and exit the cave. Kelvin heals Gerald, who is badly injured from his fight with the Demon King. Gerald evolves and resummons himself. Kelvin notices a change in Gerald's appearance, and his stats start increasing rapidly. Clotho encounters a few attacks on his shield during the battle, which ends up being broken. His shield is repaired, and Ethel sees how strong he has become. Kelvin teases Gerald for being all talk after his healing, but acting weak when hurt. He notices the princess is quiet and approaches her. She questions his decision to risk inviting a demon's daughter as his servant, worried about what others might say. Kelvin reassures her that he has S-rank concealment, so she won't be detected. He encourages her to feel comfortable and suggests they head to town first. She admits she's nervous, having never been in a town or left the mansion mentioned before. Eiffel reassures her that the people of Parth are nice, and they set off together. Kelvin and his servants enter the town and walk through the market. Sarah, the Demon King's daughter, gasps in amazement at the strange items for sale. She gets curious about the fruits, weapons, and other things she's never seen before. Seeing her relaxed demeanor, Kelvin feels relieved that he was worried for nothing. He instructs Ethel to take Sarah to the inn while he heads off to report on his adventure. Kelvin gets promoted to rank A adventurer. As he enters the inn, he walks into a surprise party thrown by Akame in honor of his promotion. He notices that Ethel isn't fitting into the party easily. He joins the celebration and everyone enjoys themselves. After the party, everyone falls into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, Kelvin wakes up and realizes Sarah is missing. He gets up to find her and sees her sitting outside, talking to herself. Ethel starts a lonely conversation with the deceased Victor. She expresses her enjoyment of the new world and how she wants to see the sea, just like he had described to her when she was younger. She decides to go find the sea on her own, while Kelvin hides, watching her. The first scene reveals Kelvin's story of signing a contract with Eiffel, making her his servant. He welcomes her to the party, and she expresses her gratitude. Kelvin is in his inn room with his servants, boasting about his S-rank blacksmithing skills. He builds armor for Sarah using pieces of Victor's armor, just as she requested. She says she wants to feel him by her side whenever she fights. Eiffel names her armor the Queen of Terror, and Sarah likes the name. Kelvin unveils the magic Dainslife sword he created for Gerald using his S-rank skill. Eiffel wants to know their weapon skills, and he assures them they will show it in their next fight. Kelvin wants to change the subject. Ethel asks about Kelvin's food preferences, and he requests rice, which is an unusual food in Parth. They question what rice is, and he explains the special experience of eating it. The next day, Kelvin, Ethel, and Sarah set off on a trip for Sarah to learn more about the world and satisfy Kelvin's food cravings. He promises Sarah they will go fishing. He says they're headed to the water country of Tourage, which has a rice-like plant he's always wanted to visit. Gerald interrupts his thoughts, asking about Melfina. He explains that he can't overcome Melfina due to her divine class rank, leading her to seek an alternative for resurrection. She plans to find her avatar to reclaim it, describing the avatar as very beautiful compared to other girls. She takes a break and flies off. While they're on their way, Sarah excitedly jumps at Kelvin and asks to ride a boat. Eiffel, sitting next to him, jealously tries to redirect his attention back to her. Gerald and Clotho silently tease about why the princess is taking action. Sarah mentions that she feels they're being watched. Suddenly, the carriage stops as a group of thieves jumps out from the bushes where they've been hiding to confront them. They introduce themselves as the Black Wind Crew, notorious thieves in Tourage. Kelvin instructs Sarah to handle it. She steps out, and the gang leader, a young woman, offers to take her as a bounty. Immediately, someone attacks her, but Sarah punches him, sending him flying. She then attacks the other crew members, leaving them in shock. Kelvin says Sarah's level is 75, so they don't stand a chance against her. They walk into the city, and Sarah spots the sea. Excitedly, she asks Kelvin to teach her how to swim. He agrees, and they head to the Adventurers Guild in Tourage. In the guild, Kelvin meets the guild master of Tourage. She explains she was part of Leo's adventuring party 20 years ago, the guild master of Parth. She mentions he spoke highly of her, surprising Kelvin given how intense she seems. The guild master talks about the Black Wind Gang, explaining that the new Black Wind Gang was once an adventuring party that took down the old Black Wind. Ethel and Sarah express a desire to take them down, but Kelvin warns that it's not as easy as it seems. The guild master elaborates that the main gang leader, Kristoff, is a national hero from Trison, and she doesn't want to confront him to avoid international conflict between her town and Trison. Sarah gets upset about this, but Kelvin calms her down by using the servant network. He tells her the guildmaster needs their help, and even though he isn't thrilled about Kristoff's level, he has no choice but to assist. He asks her to sense 4 powerful adventurers. She says she picks up on a strong adventurer entering the town. He concludes that the heroes of Deramus will handle the mission, and as a result, the attack will be known as a hero attack. The heroes sit down with the guildmaster, who explains the town's situation to them. Toya, the party leader, is taken aback by the news and decides to accept the offer. 2 of his 4 party members disagree, saying they came on a different mission influenced by the Melfina. They ultimately decide to take the job and head toward the bandit hideout. Inside, they find a dozen kidnapped women in a room guarded by a strange-looking security guard. Shortly after, one of the guards walks in to choose a woman for his adventure. He approaches a young lady with her daughter, but they both scream and refuse. Suddenly, he gets hit hard by Gerald and falls. The woman and her daughter are grateful for their timely rescue. They head to the main room where the leader, Kristoff, is telling one of his gang members that their team was attacked and their identities have been revealed. Another female bandit gets angry at Conra, the gang leader whom Sarah attacked earlier. Another bandit member sits and mentions he's looking forward to fighting a very strong adventurer. Kelvin comes in with his servants, and the bandits get excited, preparing to attack, but they're taken down quickly by Kelvin and his servants. The heroes finally arrive at the building, thinking that an adventurer party has attacked some bandits. When they realize there are people present, they go into the room with the women and see a giant slime, Clotho, protecting them. Toya raises his sword to attack it, but the lady's daughter, who was nearly attacked before, stops him and tries to defend the slime. Toya introduces himself as the hero of Daramus, despite his party wanting him to stay silent. The women are shocked and honor the for sending heroes to their rescue. The lady from before encourages them to go and help the former adventurers since the bandits have many members and the adventurers aren't strong enough. They enter another room and find 4 dead adventurers. They assume these were the adventurers who got killed and rush out to confront the bandits. They enter yet another room and see Kelvin and his servants sitting there, looking like the real bandits. Toya angrily demands to know how they could attack the adventurers so unjustly, getting ready to fight them. Kelvin sits back, smirking at them, and replies like a true bandit. He claims the adventurers were pathetic when they arrived and only got the smallest punishment from him, but they begged for their lives. He suggests they're weak, even though they're rank A adventurers, and they cry like babies. Toya and his party members get mad at his comments. They introduce themselves as heroes ready to fight for justice. Kelvin laughs and calls them weak, then challenges Toya and his group to take him on one-on-one. Toya says that's a cowardly move and suggests taking him on alone. His party members disagree, arguing he's just trying to provoke them, so they prepare to fight alongside Toya against Kelvin, the so-called bandit leader. Kelvin is shocked by their reactions and discusses them with his party, while the heroes plan their next steps. He admits he's showing off to make the heroes see bandits as the real villains, so they can be reported and lose Trison's protection. Gerald is impressed with his strategy, calling him a battle junkie. Sarah asks why he's fighting alone, and he reminds her she had already fought with the thieves earlier. He orders Ethel to bring the food basket and tells them to eat while they watch him battle. Ethel gets anxious and warns Kelvin about their unique skills despite their lower levels. Kelvin says he wants to prove he can face his weakness of fighting in a group using his new tool. Toya glowers at Kelvin, calling him a boss who steals and kidnaps people, and he vows to win the fight at any cost. They each connect with their own fairies before the fight begins. Toya connects to his light fairy, Setsuna links with her wind fairy, Nana with her water fairy, and Miyabi with her dark fairy. The battle starts, and Toya makes the first attack. Kelvin casts a radiant spell and counters. His spell hits 4 of them, but they defend against it. Nana releases a dragon from her backpack, which unleashes a fiery breath at Kelvin. He uses his sonic acceleration spells to dodge the flames, impressing Toya with his agility. Kelvin then copies Miyabi's fighting style with the Skill Eater tool from Victor's armor. She collapses, and the other heroes rush to her side. Toya tells Nana to help Miyabi while he angrily attacks Kelvin. Nana uses a light heal on Miyabi, and she regains consciousness. Kelvin and Toya continue their fierce battle until Toya drops his sword. Kelvin goes for him with bare-handed magic, steadily pushing him back. Setsuna is taken aback, knowing Toya is an S-rank swordsman. Kelvin uses the S-rank martial skill he copied from Sarah against Toya, who struggles to defend himself. Setsuna steps in to protect Toya, but Kelvin stops her with an earthen blockade. Setsuna counters with her Zantetsu, can spell to break the walls. Kelvin catches them off guard, causing Toya to bleed from his hands. Despite the pain, Toya tells himself he should be able to defeat a thug like Kelvin if he wants to take down the Demon King alone. Setsuna gives him a firm slap, leaving him shocked. She angrily tells him to think of himself for once instead of trying to protect others. She reminds him of the time they were all chosen as heroes by stressing their need to fight every battle together as a team. Nana and Miyabi back Setsuna up, advising him to calm down. Toya, feeling speechless and helpless, calls out their names and apologizes for his actions, and they agree. They send a blurry light fairy vision to Kelvin, which makes him unaware, but he manages to control his focus. He admits they're clever, but a second later, he gets hit by a frostbound attack from Nana and a crushing blow from Miyabi. He feels the ground freeze beneath him and a heavy weight on his body. Tony and Setsuna rush at him to finish him off, but he self-detonates and heals his blind eyes. Caught off guard by the explosion, Toya and Setsuna quickly defend themselves but feel weak from the blast. They assume he won't survive the destruction, but he emerges looking harmless. He applauds their teamwork, boasting that he can't lose the fight with his spell. He critiques their moves and offers them better options for next time. They all all attack him at once, and Nana traps him in a frozen web, preventing him from using his assist magic. Miyabi calls forth a large monster to attack him, but even while bound, Kelvin counters by summoning his golems for defense. Sarah teases him, asking if he needs help, but he brushes her off. Miyabi strikes again with a stronger spell, but Kelvin seems excited by their effective attacks and manages to defend himself. Utilizing the parallel thought skill he copied from Miyabi, he creates a new spell, breaks free from the bindings, and shatters the ice bricks on the wall. The heroes are surprised again, but when they launch a final attack, he defeats all 4 of them, leaving them unconscious and injured. In the next scene, Toya wakes up hearing familiar voices in his head. He opens his eyes to see Setsuna and Nana looking at his injured body. He spots Kelvin with the young girl from the room and tries to attack him for touching her. Kelvin tells him to look closely, and he notices a smaller version of Clotho in her hands. He quickly realizes they are the adventurers who came before him. The young girl confirms he's right and tells them. Kelvin agrees and apologizes. Toya recalls his advice to them and kneels to apologize for being wrong. Sarah makes a sarcastic comment from behind, saying Kelvin put in the effort to ensure that. Toya admits that he is a better and greater teacher and will do whatever Kelvin demands. Kelvin tells him he'll grant his wish regarding the game, then jokingly tells him to start stripping. Everyone gasps in shock. The freed hostages from the bandit hideout are seated in a vehicle, which takes off as the young girl happily waves to Kelvin. The guildmaster informs Kelvin that they will be moved to a safe location and will help the Tourage identify them. She mentions that Kristoff and his bandit crew are locked up and will be questioned about their involvement with Trison. Kelvin thanks her for her decision, and she thanks him for helping them overcome the hurdle. She asks about his next move, and he shares his plans for some fun-filled punishment games. Kelvin trains the heroes in a river inside an enclosed cave. He creates an octogigrant monster for them to defeat. The monster hits Toya, sending him flying. Setsuna tries to defend him after realizing the creature is storing electricity. Kelvin calls Nana and Miyabi from behind, instructing them to use the environment to their advantage and freeze the water so the frontline fighters can have better footing. The octogigrant attacks them, prompting Kelvin to sigh at their incompetence. Sierra runs over to where he is seated and interrogates him, asking why he's training them. Kelvin replies that he has no real reason, other than they are heroes chosen by Melfina, who teleported from another world. He thinks to himself that they are from his home. He hears a loud growl and turns back to see that the monster has been defeated. He invites everyone to eat, and Eiffel calls out to them. The meal features various delicacies, and Nana excitedly shouts at the sight of the food. Kelvin suggests she go fishing. Toya and Setsuna discuss the dungeon monsters and how they're getting stronger with the return of the Demon King. Kelvin addresses the situation, asking Toya what he would do if he encountered an S-class dungeon boss and tried to attack with his poor fighting skills. Toya admits he would run, fully aware that he can't win. Disappointed, Kelvin presses him for more. Toya continues, stating that he doesn't care what others think of him. He will train hard with his party, and they will win. Impressed by his determination, Kelvin gives him a pass and reminds him not to forget his words while leaving the cave. The heroes are at the dock, ready to leave. Toya thanks Kelvin and the servants for their time. Kelvin gives each of them a pendant, telling them to use it as a lucky charm. Toya promises they will be stronger when they meet again. He and Kelvin shake hands, and the heroes set sail on their ship. Kelvin stands by the sea, staring into the distance with a troubled mind. Gerald approaches him and asks what's wrong. Kelvin questions him about the Lazia Empire that destroyed his home in Alcarl, asking if he thinks it can be defeated. Gerald answers that he didn't think it was possible before joining Kelvin's party, but now, with his strength and skills, he believes it's a real possibility. He praises Kelvin, and Ethel calls him a kind master. Suddenly, Sarah jumps out of nowhere and crashes into Kelvin. He runs away, feeling the pain from the impact. She announces that a messenger from the Tourage Guild says someone is around to see him. Kelvin jumps in excitement, realizing that the reason he came from Parth has finally surfaced. After defeating the bandits and the rank S boss, the king has noticed him and wants to see him. At the palace, Kelvin and his group walk into the king's court. He bows and hears a woman's voice. She introduces herself as the ruler, saying she dislikes formalities and tells them to stop bowing. She praises Kelvin for his achievements and tells him to ask for whatever he wants. Kelvin requests food, especially rice. The queen laughs and informs them that a banquet has been prepared. She encourages them to eat and drink as much as they like. Kelvin happily enjoys the banquet filled with delicious food, shouting in joy after finally getting his rice. He eats several bowls, while Gerald and Sarah drink beer, and Ethel learns Japanese cooking recipes from the chef. Several days later, Kelvin and his group are still at the palace, as the queen requested. Ethel enters his room with his lunch, bringing a dish that includes rice. Kelvin praises her for learning to cook so quickly. She explains that the queen Queen gave her this chance. The Queen enters Kelvin's room to join her for a meal. Feeling uneasy with her presence, he asks why she keeps coming to eat in his room. She pretends to enjoy Ethel's cooking, but reveals her true intentions by moving closer and suggesting he stay back in Tourage. Kelvin insists he must protect Parth from monsters, even as the Queen seductively demands his protection day and night. Kelvin turns to see Ethel watching from her knees, and he quickly joins her to apologize to the Queen, saying he needs to go home. She agrees and provides an easier route for them. She opens a teleportation portal in the palace. Sarah mentions she saw a portal at her father's mansion. Ethel asks why the heroes didn't use the portal, and the Queen explains they lack access from the receiving country, unlike them. Kelvin is shocked to see Leo's stamp for their access. He playfully curses him in his mind, and they leave the palace. Back in Parth, Claire teases Kelvin about the Queen's interest in him. He insists he won't work for Tourage and loves being a free adventurer. Ethel walks in with a cup of tea for him, asking what he plans to do for the day. He replies he'll go shopping later. Claire overhears and jokes about him shopping for another pretty servant. He loudly responds that he's shopping for a house. Kelvin buys a mansion and brings everyone inside. He hires the young lady who was kidnapped in Tourage, along with her chatty daughter as his maid. Sarah gets excited and rushes off to pick the best room. Ethel goes to check the kitchen, and Gerald heads to the basement while Kelvin strolls into his room. He's thrilled about the bath in the house, and finally takes a bath. At night, used to the inn's bed, he struggles to sleep in the new place. Suddenly, he notices Melfina's arrival and welcomes her. He calls her, and she transforms into a beautiful figure with wings. Kelvin is impressed and teases her. Melfina finishes the dish. Ifil serves at the table and feels very satisfied. She praises her cooking and scolds Kelvin for buying the house while she was away. She mentions that she went to the inn looking for him, but couldn't find him. He blames her for not connecting through the servant network. Gerald, confused about who the lady is, asks Kelvin about her identity. Melfina stands up and introduces herself. Gerald is surprised, and Sarah doesn't look impressed. Melfina apologizes to Sarah for her father, the Demon King. Gerald, sarcastically, says he thought Kelvin had brought home a new mistress. Immediately, Kelvin denies the accusation, and Melfina calls herself his wife, not his mistress. Kelvin nearly spits out his food, shocked at Melfina's declaration. In the next scene, the party sits together enjoying dessert. Melfina decides to reward Kelvin for successfully summoning her. She gifts him a flower, which she calls the Grace of Melfina, the supreme being of reincarnation. It has two effects. He will be able to summon heroes from another world, and he can heal once a month from any injury that could be fatal. Melfina and Sarah spar in the training ground. Sarah attacks Melfina with her hand armor, which she received from Victor, but it has no effect, and Sarah's armor disappears. They exchange blows, and Sarah wins after landing a hit on Melfina's chest. They commend each other on their strength. Gerald, watching, asks why they are fighting, and Sarah replies they are competing for who gets to sleep next to Kelvin. Kelvin sits on the balcony, reflecting on the summoning gift Melfina gave him. He thinks about the heroes from the other world and wonders if they're on the Western continent. He muses that anyone can be a hero as long as they can fight properly. Meanwhile, Melfina and Sarah take a warm bath and feel refreshed after the fight. Ifil comes in to check on Sarah's body pain, and Sarah explains that Kelvin helped her. Melfina recalls that Kelvin's mood has seemed off for a while. Ethel tells her he's been in a funk since she mentioned his summoning abilities. Melfina meets with Kelvin and suddenly shoves a chocolate bar in his mouth. He complains, but she ignores him. She asks if he has any questions and demands to know why she wants heroes. Melfina explains about the Demon King. She says that Demon Kings reappear in regular cycles, and she doesn't know what form the next one will take. She explains that Demon Kings have a skill called Papias, which does two things. It multiplies their evil and nullifies all their pain and injuries. Kelvin perks up at this and wonders how they will be defeated. Melfina tells him that's why heroes from another world are summoned to defeat them. These heroes have unique powers that can neutralize the Demon King's invincibility. Kelvin understands and declares he'll be able to defeat a Demon King, and Melfina agrees. However, he argues that forcing people to become heroes against their will isn't the right approach since it takes time to adjust to the environment. Melfina explains that he can always use the reincarnation method if summoning living souls is an issue, but she warns that reincarnation costs a lot of MP and can only be done on a single powerful person. She assures him not to worry, but he only has one chance and enough time to make a good choice. Kelvin gathers the party and maids together. Melfina is surprised by how quickly he made this decision, considering his earlier uncertainty. Kelvin admits he's not entirely sure, but has consulted everyone first. He has a lot of responsibilities, and if he can't handle a hero, then he's not strong enough for important tasks. Gerald cheers him on, and Sarah says she's ready to meet her new sparring sparring partner. Eiffel reminds the new maids to act appropriately during the summoning, and when the hero arrives, Kelvin cancels the summoning of his servants, and they return to his mind. Eiffel gives him a potion to boost his MP, which he drinks. Melfina initiates the reincarnation summoning, using his MP. He allows her to use all but one of his MP to summon a very strong hero. She begins the summoning process, and after a bit, Kelvin sits watching the bright green light, waiting for the hero to show up. Melfina informs him that the hero is selecting the skills for their new life. Kelvin figures this selection might take up to half a day, but Melina tells him that the time zones are different. Shortly after, she mentions that the hero has chosen their skills and is on the way. The hero finally appears as a small girl, and Kelvin is stunned to see a little child. He introduces himself, and she gets excited when she learns he's an adventurer. She introduces herself as Ryo Saiki. He apologizes for reincarnating her, but she bursts into tears of gratitude. Kelvin yells for her to stop crying, but she doesn't. Gerald teases him again as usual, saying he has a knack for making girls cry during their first meeting. Kelvin disapproves, and Ryo faints from exhaustion. Melfina tells him she's worn out, and he acknowledges it's because she's a child. She assures him that he used all his MP on her, making her the best summon. Kelvin also collapses and loses consciousness from using all his magic in the summoning. Ryo sleeps restlessly and wakes up after a nightmare. She runs outside the building and races until she falls. She's thrilled to smell the grass and see the sky. Kelvin approaches her and starts chatting. He explains he understands what it feels like to be in a new world since he was reincarnated as well. He doesn't want to force her to become someone she's not, especially since she has the memories of her previous life. Ryo cuts him off, saying she's very interested. She shares she was sick in her past life and never had the chance to walk or attend school. Her only friend was adventure books. She expresses her desire to join his party and make the most of her second chance. As they head inside, Kelvin tells her that very few people in town have black hair, so she'll have to be identified as his half-sister from a distance. She's thrilled at this idea since she was an only child in her previous life. She thinks of a fitting name to call him, and he smiles at her. Kelvin wakes up to see Sarah on the bed and remembers the conversation in the dining room about who would sleep next to him. He tries to turn onto his back and finds Melfina behind him. He giggles at her sleep talking. When he tries to move his legs, he discovers Rian is sleeping under the duvet between them. He wonders if sisters really slide into their brothers' beds like this. He feels happy that she's fitting into the space. He finally gets up, walks to the window, and comments that it will be a busy day. Kelvin takes everyone in the house to the dark purple forest. Rian runs around energetically, saying it feels like a dungeon game. Ellie and Luca, the maids, are sitting on the mat with Melfina. Ellie asks Kelvin why they're in the forest with them. He explains he wants them to level up a little so they can have some self-defense skills, even though his golems are guarding the mansion. Luca admits she has never fought monsters, and Kelvin reassures them that they'll be safe. He explains they will stay at the dungeon's entrance and level up through experience sharing skills. Meanwhile, Sarah, Clotho, and Gerald are hunting monsters in the dungeon. Clotho shares experience by linking different forms of itself to the servant network. Eventually, they all level up and their stats increase quickly, much to their amazement. Eiffel senses a shadow wolf approaching. When it arrives, it jumps to attack, but Kelvin stops it with an air pressure spell, immobilizing it. He makes a contract with the wolf. Rian and the maid's daughter excitedly play with it. Eiffel spots Erd's party coming into the forest. Kelvin is surprised, thinking the forest is usually deserted. Erd sees Kelvin and greets him, asking what he's doing in the forest. Kelvin lies, saying he's there for a picnic. Erd then inquires about the beautiful women with him and if they're his party. Kelvin answers yes, except for his maids, Ellie and Luca. He asks about their mission, and Erd tells him they're there to kill monsters to pass their rank B exams. The other party members get jealous of Kelvin, surrounded by all the beautiful women. They comment on his little sister and Melfina, calling her a lovely saint. Erd tells them to knock it off, but they run away, saying he can't relate to their pain because he has a wife and kids. He chases after them as Kelvin giggles at their drama. Sarah, Clotho, and Gerald return from the forest. Sarah asks Erd why he's in the forest, and they explain their mission. Realizing what they did in the forest, Gerald concludes it could be a problem. Eiffel uses her far-seeing skill to check and realizes there are no monsters left. Sarah and Gerald admit to killing them all. Kelvin rushes to see Erd and apologizes for the situation. Erd tells him not to worry, saying Leo will understand. Erd changes the subject, confirming his party is now very strong and ready for the rank S exam. Kelvin looks on in shock. Back at the mansion, Kelvin and Ryan give the wolf a bath. Kelvin complains about the guildmaster and how quiet he's been about Kelvin's potential promotion to rank S. Alex assures him he'll do well on the exams. The wolf interrupts their conversation by shaking off water and splashing it on Kelvin. Rion laughs at him, and he smiles at the sight. Kelvin puts a leash on the wolf's neck, hands it to Rion, and calls it her partner. The wolf communicates with Rion, and she responds. Ethel and Kelvin are surprised by this skill. Rion mentions it's one of the skills she has. Gerald calls out to Ryan to start her sword training. She runs to meet him, and they begin. She learns to fish with Sarah, dances with the maids, enjoys herself at Claire's inn, and rides her wolf really fast. Melfina and Kelvin check on her while she sleeps, and confirm she's improving. Rion's stats have gone up, and her levels are higher. At night in the mansion, Kelvin, Clotho, Rion, and Sarah are awake, while the others are sound asleep. Some masked men surround the mansion with plans to attack. Sarah uses telepathy to sense them and counts 14 of them. Gerald stands guard at the maid's door to keep them safe. Kelvin uses the far-seeing skill he copied from Ethel to check the men's stats. He notices they have low levels. He encourages Rion and her wolf to take on the challenge and attack them. Rion eagerly accepts. Kelvin uses a mini part of Clotho to connect her to the servant network for far-seeing, and he gives her a resounding mithril sword he reforged from Cashel. The leader of the masked men wants to attack Kelvin because he learned they worked with the Deramis heroes to take down Kristoff and his team. Rion steps outside and buzzes with excitement, feeling confident. She expresses how happy she is to be among adventurers and promises to make them proud. She charges at the men and succeeds. While in the mansion, Kelvin and Sarah analyze her strengths and weaknesses. Sarah identifies areas where she can improve. Kelvin heads out to the forest to search for the leader, instructing Sarah to take Rion and his wolf back to the mansion. He tells Clotho to clean up the field. Kelvin finds the leader in the forest as he's trying to escape. In Tryson Castle, the Emperor and other generals sit at the round table to discuss the mess Kristoff has caused the country. Asgard, the Dragoon general, says Tristan, the mixed demon beast army general, is responsible for securing slaves in Tourage, which led to the incident. Tristan replies, saying it was just a barbaric adventure and not for any good cause. Dan Dalba, the Iron Steel Knight general, shuts him down, calling his points meaningless. He points out that the incident has put the blame on Gon, Tora, and Deramis, and war could happen if they don't clear their names. Tristan suggests they start a war with the countries since they have stronger armies and have been preparing for a long time. They vote, and it's a tie. The Emperor calls for the last general to break the tie. Dan's son, Idilba, seeks out General Clive from his odd-looking home but goes in the nude and asks him how he looks. Kelvin and his party ride in a carriage through the southwestern part of Gon, in the Crest Forest. Melfina soars above the chariots, using her wings to guard against surprise attacks. While in the chariot, Ethel feels a sense of familiarity with the area. Kelvin suggests it might be her elven blood that's causing these feelings. Sarah mentions she learned about elves who live in the western continent, not the eastern part. Melfina responds that some elves moved to the eastern continent and are now protected by the Gon King. Kelvin explains to the party why they urgently need to travel. He recalls a conversation with the guildmaster about his attackers, mentioning that every country has seen increased activity from Tryson along their borders, and that Tryson might be planning a war. He advises everyone to be cautious, especially since he was attacked for being associated with the incident. The guildmaster then hands him an invitation letter from Leonhart Gon, the Beast King of Gon. He says the king wishes to meet Kelvin and offer him rank S promotional exams. While in the chariot, he assesses the situation with his party and realizes that the king is extremely powerful and doesn't rely on others to fight. Gerald questions whether Kelvin has any different thoughts, to which he replies that he's not considering defeating the Gon King. Kelvin speculates that the attack may come from Tryson and tells his party not to be afraid. Ethel advises him to avoid danger. Almost immediately, an arrow lands in front of their carriage, prompting them to come down. Kelvin shows his letter from the king to the attackers and introduces himself as Kelvin, the adventurer. Suddenly, a young man with a staff featuring blue eyes apologizes for the trouble and introduces himself as Delras, the elder of the elf village. He mentions that the Gon King has spoken highly of Kelvin. As he approaches them, he suddenly stops in disbelief upon seeing Ethel, whom he calls Lumil, and questions how she is still alive. Kelvin and Ethel exchange confused glances. The elder and Kelvin's party take a seat, and and he apologizes for mistaking Ethel for Lumil. Kelvin asks him to explain what happened to Lumil, hoping it might help them understand Ethel's background. Delras begins to recount their peaceful life in the Western continent until the Fire Dragon King arrived 20 years ago. The king claimed he had been wronged by someone from the village and demanded that the person surrender, or he would reduce everything to ashes. Delras states that their village was confused by his rage, resulting in the deaths of half of the villagers without understanding why. The Fire Dragon King continued to attack until a woman stepped forward to sacrifice herself. The king declared she wasn't the wrongdoer but offered to stop if she would marry him. She agreed, and the king ceased the assaults. Ryan comments on how brave the woman was. Gerald then asks why they still fled from the western continent to the east. Delras explains that years after the incident, Lumil's body was found dead in the village, and they still don't know the cause of her death. They had to leave their village for a new home to avoid detection by the Fire Dragon King. Sarah suggests that if Delras mistook Ethel for Lumil, then Ethel is likely her daughter. Gerald also speculates that she could be the child of the Fire Dragon King and Lumil. Melfina disagrees, arguing that her blood would be too strong for a half-elf if she indeed carried the lineage of the Dragon King. Delras apologizes, saying he doesn't have any more information. Ethel reassures them that she is fine, as she has no memory of her parents, and she is happy with her new family. Kelvin asks Delras about the real situation. Delras explains that monsters have been kidnapping elves from the villages, even with a disruption barrier meant to protect them. He complains that, despite fighting alongside Gon's soldiers, they're struggling because the monsters are too strong. Kelvin's party expresses their support and readiness to help protect the villagers. Kelvin requests the elders' permission to upgrade the village to make it harder for monsters to enter easily. Delras agrees to the renovations. Kelvin smiles sinisterly and says it's time to get to work. Meanwhile, the mixed demon beast armies patrol the forests, anticipating a fight with Gon's soldiers. During their discussion, invincible arrows start taking down the soldiers one by one. Kelvin and Ethel are up on a watchtower. Ethel uses the shadow bow that merciless Kelvin made for her to fire the silent invincible arrows. They both use their far-seeing skills to look out over the distance, and Kelvin mentions he built the watchtower with adamantine rampant. Melfina uses her blue magic to create fog around the elf village's walls. Kelvin reinforces the walls, and Sarah amplifies the water in the moats using her black magic. Gerald points out that their traps will do most of the work for them. At the mixed demon beast army's camp, a soldier manages to escape and informs the vice commander about the attack they're facing. He explains that the attackers are not Gon soldiers but an adventuring party. The vice commander grabs a white horn and prepares to summon their secret weapon. Melfina, Rion, and her wolf emerge from the dark woods, thanking the guard for leading them. The guard runs away, and the vice commander sounds the horn to call forth a gigantic lord. As soon as the horn blows, a massive monster rises from the forest. Melfina challenges Rion to take down the monster, promising that she'll be a true adventurer if she succeeds. Rion accepts the challenge. She strikes the monster with her first sword, but it breaks. She falls back and gets ready to charge again. Cloth hands her new swords, and she starts attacking the monster with a dual-wielding sword technique. The vice commander and the other soldiers are taken aback by her skills. She fights the monster using the false holy sword and the magic sword Kalidbolg that Kelvin crafted for her, while the wolf uses its raging blade, landing successful hits on the monster. The monster kneels in defeat and looks ready to collapse. The vice commander transforms the monster into a gigantic furnace monster. Rion comments that the flames seem weaker than Ethel's, and she defeats the monster once more using the same tactics. The vice commander laments that a young girl just wiped out the mixed demon beast army and Trison's forces. Excited by her victory, Rion hugs Melfina. Kelvin claps from the tower, praising her growth and strength in such a short time. Suddenly, they are attacked again, but they manage to defend themselves. They spot a male warrior and 4 female warriors in the sky, and Kelvin grins wickedly. General Clive from Trison Castle hovers in the sky with his 4 female warriors. He spots Ethel, takes a liking to her, and declares her his favorite elf out of all he's encountered. He orders her to be his slave, and uses the charming eye skill that makes anyone obey him. Kelvin quickly intercepts the magic attack, angering Clive for interfering. Kelvin tells Clive he has no right to touch his woman. Clive calls it a lame line. Kelvin checks his stats and sees Clive has unique skills. He wonders if Clive is reincarnated. Clive, surprised, reveals his concealment rank is A, and that Kelvin can only detect it with appraisal eyes if he's reincarnated too. Kelvin tells Ethel to head into the village while he destroys the watchtower. Ethel complies and stealthily runs down. Clive sees her and orders her to stay back, but Kelvin unexpectedly attacks him, causing Clive to lose his balance. Kelvin destroys the watchtower and creates 4 obsidian edge lances. He attacks Clive, but Clive blocks them with his helix barrier, pushing the lances away easily. Kelvin realizes Clive is strong and Kelvin smirks. Clive comments on his creepy laugh and tells him to watch his back instead. The female warriors with Clive attack, but Kelvin blocks them with his lances. Noticing they're charmed, he tries to avoid hurting them. Kelvin calls Clive an unimpressive hero for using magic on his party. Clive insists he's wrong. They're excited to serve a super handsome master. He claims Kelvin is outnumbered and should die to acquire Ethel for himself. Ethel retaliates by shooting a penetrating arrow at Clive's helix barrier to silence him. Surprised, Kelvin summons his 4 golems, impressing Clive with his black magic. Clive sends his female warriors to attack the golems, but Kelvin tells his golems not to kill them. Clive and Kelvin face off, exchanging attacks. Kelvin launches a barrage, but Clive blocks it. Clive counters, and Kelvin dodges quickly but suddenly stops when he sees the magical shots are hitting both his golems and the female warriors. Clive says he doesn't care about them and has plenty more. As Kelvin rises into the sky, Clive notices he's trying to protect the warriors. Clive calls him Mr. Battle Junkie, saying he enjoys power and battles just like him. Kelvin admits power excites him, but if he doesn't care about the people who love him, then he's pathetic and ugly. Clive, annoyed, says he doesn't like Kelvin, and Kelvin echoes the sentiment. Clive uses the Helix Barrier spell to attack, while Kelvin counters with the Vortex Edge spell. The spells create a bright flash, injuring Clive's face, as Kelvin's staff breaks apart. Frustrated by his scar, Clive summons his ultimate rank S magic, enveloping the entire village in a powerful breeze. Kelvin, regaining his footing, realizes things are looking bad. He orders Clotho to bring forth his rank S Blackstaff Disaster. Summoning his ultimate rank S magic, he attacks Clive with a Boreas Death Scythe spell, cutting Clive's magic core in 2 and clearing the air. Clive crashes to the ground with a heavy thud, losing his legs. Kelvin moves in to finish him, but Clive's body suddenly vanishes from the spot. Kelvin turns around and sees another general with a huge monster. The general introduces himself as Tristan Faze, the general of the Mixed Demon Beast Army, who hinted at the attack on the Elven village. Kelvin wonders about his summoning magic, connecting it to the monster. Tristan admits they lost the battle but retreats, insisting on joining General Clive because of his mission. He suddenly disappears from Kelvin's sight. His servants link up with him through the servant network. They all ask about the general, but he apologizes for letting him go. He says he's heading back to the village and that they will meet there. Ethel shares the news of their battle success with the Elder, explaining how they defeated the Trison generals and saved the village. The Elder requests the elves prepare a banquet to celebrate this victory. Gerald teases her about how Kelvin claimed her as his woman. She blushes, saying she's happy that her master said it. Kelvin comes down to join them and asks what he said. Ethel kneels down, turning red with embarrassment. Sarah, Rion, and Melfina race back to Kelvin. Rion teleports with her wolf using a spell she just created and wins the race. Sarah laments losing to Rion, not Melfina. Mel encourages her to be happy for Rion's progress, which makes Sarah smile and congratulate her. Rion chats about her adventures and victories with Kelvin. Meanwhile, in the Trison castle, General Clive is chained and laid out, with his legs healed by Tristan. Tristan enters and informs him he'll be a test subject as a reincarnated being. He plans to test 342 cursed weapons on him and heal him afterward. He hands his subjects instructions not to let Clive die and leaves. Back in the Elven village, the villagers and adventurers enjoy a lively banquet, celebrating joyfully. Kelvin sits alone under a tree when Ethel approaches him. She shows him a gift she received from the Elder that belonged to her mother, and he helps her attach it to her hair. She expresses her happiness about coming to the village and appreciates the elves' acceptance of her, despite being half-elven. She asks what's on his mind, and he reveals he wants to become very strong to protect the people he loves, and he's thankful for meeting his network in this world. Suddenly, he gets a flash of a memory from his past life. The other adventurers call out to him as they approach. Sarah jokes about Kelvin, and they all rush to meet him. A young girl dashes up to Kelvin and thanks him for saving her village. He pats her on the head, surprising everyone as she bursts out laughing. She introduces herself as Leohart Gon, the Beast King of Gon, leaving them all wide-eyed in shock. He mentions he can change forms and has been watching Kelvin's exams. He states Kelvin passed his rank S exams and is now a summoner. His party congratulates him on his achievement, and he expresses his happiness. The king invites him to his crowning ceremony in 4 days, where he'll compete with other rank S summoners. Kelvin is excited about the upcoming battle, while his party looks at him, noting his awkward enthusiasm for fights.